with the Alpha Dog, and we've got one exciting show for you today. I am jacked up. We've got two dealer executives from state dealer associations, starting with Jason Wilson from KYADA, Kentucky Auto Dealers. Hello, Jason.
Hello, good to see you, sir. Good to be with you.
You ready for an exciting show? We're going to do it today.
I'm ready. I'm geared up.
You may have noticed we had Don Hall on the program. Don Hall has contracted, I guess I can announce that he's contracted COVID, but we'll see what happens there. I hate to see it. Don's a dear friend. Jennifer Briggs, one of the most exciting women in the car business, one of the best female executives in the business. What's going on with you, kid?
I don't know about exciting. I'm just, over here nose to the grindstone every day. I guess some people might call that exciting.
It's exciting.
I think it's exciting.
Well, I changed all the adjectives to exciting this week.
Oh, okay. I am excited.
Somebody gave him an AI up for a thesaurus. It's game on today.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay. When we're talking about spectacular, with the Horn Automotive Group, one of the best executive women in the car business, my friend, April Simmons.
Well, I'm super excited because I am officially getting over strep throat. So it's been a doozy week myself. So yeah, exciting is a great word, Jim. We'll go with exciting.
Exciting is a wonderful word. And guess what? In 1965, I graduated from Meridian High School in Meridian, Mississippi, before most people on this broadcast were born. And from the Mississippi Auto Dealers Association, their key executive, my friend, Marty Milstead. Hello, Marty.
Hey, Jim. It hasn't been the same at Meridian High since you left in 1965. all downhill.
I was state pole vault champion for a short time.
That's impressive.
All right.
For you guys that don't, Meridian's a big high school. So for you guys that don't.
That was actually Northeast High School.
Yeah.
I transferred the senior year into, Meridian High School, but I set the record. It was AAA. And the state record was like 9 feet. I was doing 10.6. Kids today are doing 15 feet. Not the same.
Always competitive.
And the queen of BDC, my friend Bobbie Herron. Hi, kid.
Hi, you.
What's going on with you?
A weekend full of sunshine, celebrating enough for everybody who didn't feel well, and taking one for the team. The normal, just living the best life.
We appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay,
it's been
great. The subject of this week is going to be for executive overreach, manufacturer overreach. We're going to talk about the manufacturers overstepping their bounds. Now, this is all our opinions based on the fact that we have IQs higher than the snail. But starting out with Jason, what do you see in the market right now? What's happening with the manufacturers and the dealers, and what is KYADA doing?
Well, I think what I see is what all of us see, and it's been going on for a while, and it started with EVs and using that as somewhat of a wedge issue as a way to. This is all so new and so different. It has to be treated completely different than anything that's ever been done before. Whereas these cars still have 4 wheels and a steering wheel, and operate in the same manner. And oh, by the way, this technology is old technology. I mean, it's new the way it's being put, but the first EV was done over 100 years ago. So, this rebirth has been it's been very interesting to watch unfold, because as we've seen and we'll talk about this more. I know, Jim, you touched on it. The OEMs pushing this agenda, this current administration pushing this agenda. Who is not pushing this agenda, however, is the consumer. The consumers are yet to be clamoring for these vehicles at a rate that leads to, it's looking like the earlier adopters could be the only adopters. It's so, we're cognizant as a dealer body. Look, we're going to sell what the OEMs put out there. We are pro new product. As dealers, we are the ambassadors of these new vehicles and bringing them to the public. That nobody does that better than the car dealer, and that's what we've been doing here for generations. So while my dealers are supportive and spending a lot of money and resources to prepare for these coming EVs, the looming question becomes, where's this going to go? And where are all these people who want this? I know in my state, infrastructure is a huge issue. I'll go out on a limb and say Marty has experienced the same thing in Mississippi, where you just don't have the means, where people, it makes sense for them to buy it. So that becomes what happens to those states. You have the ZEV states, the non-ZEV states, and how does that impact the dealer body as a whole? So, those are the things that are concerning. I think keeping everyone up at night to some degree, because again, I go back to, and as representing my dealers' voices, at the end of the day, there is nobody on the planet that moves vehicles better than the car dealer and the franchise system that's in place today. They have the expertise, they have the training, they have great folks that are on this panel right here, ensuring that they are equipped and able to deal with these, the demands of the public as a whole. So we're vigilant. We're watching, like a lot of my peers, we're looking at our franchise laws, and look, we're going to see some things coming down the pike here soon as it relates to Ford, for example. There are some things in the works. I think South Dakota is the first state that will probably have some insight from, based on a hearing that was done, and there should be some news on that not too far down the road, as I understand.
Is this going to be a legal precedent, what they're doing?
Well, I think what will happen, and again, I'm not an attorney, and certainly not in South Dakota, but my understanding of it is this is, this was a hearing done before a judge, Ford attorneys there, a number of Ford dealers there speaking against what Ford's wanting to do. And I think what will happen is this will be the first step. However it shakes out, then the other side will, go against. But obviously, we're looking for, when I say we, the dealer body as a whole, would love nothing more than a favorable outcome of South Dakota, and others could follow suit.
Check in there a second, April.
It's interesting because when we talk about overreach, we talk about this idea of the franchise model and that being the only overreach that there is. But I'm starting to see that the control, the OEM control of the dealer by money and power is starting to really be a bigger and bigger thing. And all we have to do is look at the transfer of money, of the difference between invoice and MSRP is now all moving into trunk money, which allows the OEM to control what the dealer does. And so I think that this is actually an even bigger issue as we move forward, because the dealer is getting more and more handcuffed as we move forward and just trying to do what we're supposed to do, which is sell a bunch of cars and make them more money by buying more cars from them, right?
What are you seeing in Mississippi?
Yeah, so I apologize, Jim. My connection went out for a second, but are we still on the same question about OEMs and
right, manufacturer overreach? Manufacturer overreach.
So yeah,
welcome back, Marty.
Yeah, thank you. They're clearly out of touch with a lot of what they're doing as far as what the consumer demand is. Ford, what they are doing as far as the charging stations and requiring dealers to put in charging stations to get their product.
That is a good fact to point out, that they're requiring a big financial investment from the dealers, and the return isn't there. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, sir. I spent Memorial Day weekend driving literally from Jackson, Mississippi to Daphne, Alabama, which is close to Mobile, Alabama, to the Mississippi coast back to Jackson. I literally saw one electric vehicle on the road when I was traveling. So they're making Mississippi dealers in Meridian, Mississippi comply with the same as a dealer in San Diego that might have a totally different, not might, has a totally different demand.
Completely different.
Right.
Yeah, so it's absurd what they're not asking.
Right.
They're calling it voluntary, but it's not voluntary.
And there's no support. Like some other OEMs, and we've talked about this in regards to the charging station requirements.
Yeah.
Volkswagen at least put together a co-op program to put some skin in the game with the dealer for installing these EV stations, where Ford has done nothing like that. It's just, we want you to do it, but we're not going to participate. It's frustrating, and I've got a big group that I work with in San Diego, and we have a huge focus in that market on EV because the consumers support it and want it. I just what is happening?
Do you think they support it and want it because it's legislated that they're going to have to do that?
I don't know. It's this wonderful little pocket in San Diego, and we even move a ton of. Well, I was telling you, we sold like 50 Mach-E's. It's just kind of craziness, and even the used EV market is super strong in that area. But then again, we're going to go across the country and look at other pockets, like Marty was saying, in Mississippi, and Jason had mentioned the infrastructure in certain areas. But I don't think it's limited to just Kentucky and Mississippi. Like we are seeing, I really think it's more states that do not have it. Even California, where it's legislated, does not have the energy infrastructure to support the EV initiative.
They actually told people not to charge their EVs during a brownout.
They can't even keep, the lights on during a regular summer. What are they going to do when they hit their EV registration goals? It's insanity.
What is the Mississippi Auto Dealers Association doing as far as your lobbying effort? What do you see happening?
Well, we just finished our session. We had a huge legislative victory, but that was because Tesla came into Mississippi and circumvented our franchise law, and they were able to basically contract with themselves, created Tesla Mississippi LLC, and Tesla's not a problem. Problem's not the right word. They're not of a concern. They're just another manufacturer that has electric vehicles. What the problem was all of a sudden Ford could come in with their EV program and form Ford Mississippi LLC. Any automotive manufacturer could have done that, and needless to say, our dealers couldn't survive in that environment if their manufacturer was able to come and open a dealership across the street from them and compete. They couldn't survive. So we passed a law. The governor signed it. It goes into effect July 1. It says if you're basically creates one set of rules. If you're a dealer in Mississippi or a manufacturer, you can't. You got to use independent dealers. And Tesla was grandfathered in, but it was a huge deal for us. And it received national attention. Not all of it favorable from the EV folks, but nonetheless, that's our latest battle and our latest victory. Thank goodness.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Bobbie, check in on that.
I try to stay pretty open-minded to the whole thing with EV. I love what Jason said, that maybe the only adopters are early adopters. Sounds like a really great title for an article, for sure. But at the same time, I believe that there are markets that want to have a strong presence of EV, just like when gas combustible engines were built, there weren't gas stations everywhere. But in agreement that not every market is like that, and not everybody wants that. I have clients in rural Pennsylvania that run truck stores that's never going to be a market that wants to be in an EV market. So my preference obviously is that a dealership have the opportunity to decide, but it's clear to me that the OEM comes down and says, hey, you have to have these charging stations, because if they don't, it will never get to the point where there's a charging station everywhere, right? That doesn't make it right, but that is what's happening. But it's a massive overreach when it comes to enforcing that. It's just like making somebody build a $3 million building because you don't like the color of their paint. It's ridiculous. And it doesn't fit into every market. So does there need to be a brand awareness and familiarity with things? Sure. But dealerships have successfully run their business for a very long time. And outside of providing a vehicle and overreaching and telling us what to do with everything inside of a store that typically doesn't work, I don't see a huge benefit that's coming from that franchise.
We've got some more to talk about there, Bobbie.
Yeah. I am really glad, though, to see Jason and Marty joining us today. And I wish that Don Hall had been on, too, because if there's anything that we can push for on this show, or as an industry leader, if there's anything I can push for, it's for more presence from people like you so that everybody is involved and aware. I think that is a huge missing component, and I hope to see that corrected.
That is a huge missing component, that the rank and file in the dealerships are not involved with associations like the dealer principals and the general managers.
Yep.
We need to get the rank and file where we have a stronger numbers presence.
Well, yeah, because if you're running a top-notch organization, that rank and file are the next executive leadership and managing partners and all of that. So to wait until they hit that level, I mean, it really puts us behind. Yeah, it puts us so far behind.
Well, and look, to that point, you all, I think one of the things that I see, and a number of my peers throughout the country are really working hard to develop these next gen programs. Because to your point, you can't wait till they're in the seat. You need to get them engaged beforehand. So outreach is critical. I'm a big proponent of, we do annual conventions still. There are other states. Marty, I think do you all still do an annual convention?
We do. Alabama and Tennessee.
That's right. You guys do a joint one. We tried to copy you all this year. And let me tell you, it's a lot of work. It's Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Maryland. We're doing a 4-state one here.
No, you didn't do that.
But the idea is exactly to y'all's point. It's greater outreach. We're encouraging dealers to bring in their future leaders, bring in their top performers, have them come to these events where they're listening to top ranked speakers talking about the things that are so critical to our industry right now. And I am seeing headway there. I really am. And I think the other part that helps with that is when we have partnerships and sponsorship for these events by these companies that also recognize, hey, it's great. I've had this relationship for 10 years. I need to work on this next relationship for the next 10 years, and getting involved that way is helped quite a bit as well.
It's interesting though, because it's like, and I won't harp on this at all, but I just want to throw it out there because these are new conversations with the two of you, Marty. I think we've chatted briefly before, but we've put out on the show many times and on every webinar and on every stage that we're more than willing to help you get a message out, but we've yet to have somebody. Don Hall's reached out to me before once or twice, but we haven't finalized anything. We've not yet had somebody reach out and go, you have an audience of thousands of people that are both executives, dealer owners, operators, decision makers, influencers, marketers,
56% dealer principals and general managers.
Right.
Broadcast.
We have a massive audience both on the show and outside of it. And most of us are marketers. So we also have real inexpensive access to ways to reach out to those people. And yet I've had nobody raise their hand and say to me, you have a massive audience. How can you help us?
Okay.
Right.
I wish somebody would.
Right. Share your next gen program link, Jason.
Let me address this right now, because look, I feel really strongly about this, and part of this goes back to my background. Okay, I haven't always been a state association executive. I started as my first job in this industry was selling Hondas. That's what I did after getting out of the Marine Corps. So I was a sales guy for years. I went through the F&I, did the sales management, did all those things. And I can tell you, as a young sales guy, and even as a mid-level manager, I didn't have much of an idea at all about what an association does or what they do. And it was It was only through when dealers got involved and saw the benefit. And mostly these are the folks that serve on our boards, right? They're the ones, it's that 80-20 rule, right? So we see at 20% doing all the work. And I'll steal a quote from Don. He says it all the time since he's not here. And who pulls if we all ride? Right. You all may have heard him say that as well. So I love that dynamic that you're talking about, Bobbie, and being able to do that, because I think it's imperative for all of our states and moving forward, especially with the things that we're dealing with right now, as we've been talking about.
Yeah. So as we say that, we are so sincere when we say, share the link for your next gen program, share the link for your association conferences, conventions, whatever we can do, even if it is like Marty, you guys just had some great success, even if it's just sharing that success with our audience to get people talking about it. Please we've invited you here to help talk about these things and spread your message. It doesn't stop at the show.
Well, I will tell you this as well. I have a podcast that we do called Kentucky Horsepower, very original name.
Nice.
And I'd like to have each of you on at some point and sort of
Would be honored.
things, and then you can share it, and we can just exponentially continue to grow this this important messaging.
Love it.
Great idea.
Well, and I think the big thing we all have to recognize is why this is important. This is important to every single person who works in the dealerships, not just the dealer principal and the general manager, but the F&I guy, the guy who just started selling Hondas yesterday. It's important for his future and his family, but it's also important to all the vendors that then support the dealerships individually, locally, and nationally. And it's important to the community involvement that most dealers do participate in. So while we talk about overreach, we have to consider that it's important, and we can't. What I fear is if we don't really start talking about it more to those levels, we will miss the opportunity, and 5 years from now go, well, man, we should have done that, or we should have done that.
How did we end up?
Let me point something out a second. Now, Ford Motor Company has split into two corporations, and they did it. This is my opinion. That's some legal stuff. This is my opinion. But
he is not a lawyer.
It's because the other 40% of the audience is the manufacturer. So.
Based on the fact that I have an IQ higher than an earthworm. Okay, this is my opinion. I believe Ford split in two corporations because Tesla has already done the groundwork. 35 states have made exceptions. And now Marty just said Tesla's grandfathered in Mississippi. So now 36 states have made exceptions for EVs in some way. But fortunately, they've locked out all the other ones. But still in all, Tesla did the groundwork. Now
Tesla is championed.
Ford is using legal precedent to say, hey, Tesla's got a pass on the dealer franchise laws. We have a pass on the dealer franchise laws. We're not subject to them because 35 states gave in already. So that
certainly feels like they're laying that groundwork.
Charlie's plan. That's why he is split in two corporations. The EV corporation theoretically is going to take the same path as Tesla and say that they are exempt from dealer franchise protection. Jason, jump on that.
Well, look, I think you're right on point, Jim. Here's, in my view, the big differentiator, right? Say what you want about Tesla. They've never had a franchisee. Ford has had franchise. That's their entire model. They have franchise agreements. They have dealers that have been pushing this product for generations. Many of times when that product was not exactly stellar, right? So let's be honest. So Ford has a commitment with a dealer network, and these dealers have invested millions of dollars of their own monies to sell and promote their product. So to me, that is a very huge difference between the two models. And suddenly, are we supposed to just simply forget that fact? And because there's this new EV section of Ford, that it's a whole new world, and none of that stuff matters.
They're exempt from.
They would like you to. They would like us to.
Yeah. So that's what I see as a huge difference. And I think, look, there's going to be challenges on this throughout. And I think Marty said it earlier as well, as it relates to Tesla. Again, they're in 35 states now. They've had all these carve outs. This is what it's always been about. This moment right here, and where the legacy manufacturers are wanting to create that niche for themselves.
Now, watch Marty Milstead. What's going to happen in your state? I predict that Ford is going to challenge that Tesla is the only one with a carve out. I think they're going to absolutely.
No, that's not going to happen because the Automotive Alliance was in support of our legislation, which Ford's a part of. And number two, because Tesla already had a physical presence here, that's why they were grandfathered in. It's not for a new location. And something that seems to get lost in all this conversation every time that it takes place is the consumer. The reason this passed in Mississippi is because of the consumer. Not just to take care of dealers, because we have dealerships all across Mississippi in places that a corporate store is never going to go. Mississippi doesn't have any mass transit that people can depend on. They rely on their automobiles to go to school, church, their favorite fishing hole, whatever it is. And
about that fishing hole, Marty.
Yes,
that's a secret.
Are their hunting spot, and they rely on their vehicles to get around the state of Mississippi, and it allows us to have dealerships, small businesses in Mississippi. It's an average of 47 employees per dealership, in places like Decatur, Mississippi, and those folks in that town depend on that dealership to get their car serviced and taken care of, and to buy at a price. And they've got the internet now, which
they've had that for a while, babe.
So anyway, the consumer is the one that's really was, if you had nothing but corporate stores and the pricing that we started out talking about, there's no competition there, and the consumer is going to lose. So that's why, that's one of the big reasons I think that the manufacturers are going to not protest, Jim, in Mississippi.
One thing I'm seeing right now is that Ford Motor Company seems to be leading the charge. I mean, General Motors is not doing as much as Ford. Ford's stepping out front, and they announced this week. Farley announced this week at Ford fixed pricing, one price. Now, fixed pricing, I believe, to be a direct attack on the dealer franchise model. That is absolutely no longer shooting a shot over the bow. That's shooting a shot at the bow. Jason?
Well, it's interesting. I worked years ago. I was a F&I manager at a Saturn dealership, and we remember Saturn and the.
Did you have a propeller beanie?
That's right. I mean, it was a really interesting experience coming from a Honda store where you negotiate every deal, then going to a Saturn store and doing F&I there. One, it's a very different clientele, right? It's a very different consumer that goes to whether it be a CarMax like they've done, or whether it's the old Saturn model. But I think to your point, yeah, I think that's right. It is a shot. It takes away the freedom of the market to decide, and every market's a little bit different. Some market, a vehicle will be really hot, and that will be treated differently than a different market where they can't give that car away. And when you take that flexibility off the table, it just makes it more difficult. And again, just another hurdle for the dealer in my eyes.
I'm going to take a page. I want to take a page on this Farley situation, though, out of marketing. So one of the things when I'm talking to general managers or decision makers about the type of marketing they're going to do, I always say, hey, it can't just be the way you look, the things you look at, right? Not everybody checks their mail every day. Not everybody is on social media. Not everybody looks at their email. So you have to know what your demographic is and then market to those people. Yeah. I don't care what you, the decision maker writing the check for the marketing, personally do, right? But I have this feeling based on, just looking back at Scion and all the things that they tried to do with Scion back in the day, which was, one price. It was everything buy online. It was all of these things that perhaps Farley himself wants to buy vehicles himself that way and thinks that the rest of the world wants to buy vehicles that way and is trying to take the 10% of the world and make it the 100% of the world. And I can't help but feel like maybe that's the gut, because ultimately at the end of the day, that failed, and it failed because consumers didn't, as a whole. Again, some do. We should have the ability for the consumers who want to buy an EV to buy an EV.
April, how many times have you heard me say what some of the people will do some of the time? as opposed to what most of the people
Bingo.
do most of the time.
Bingo. So
Some
the
of the
big
people are looking for a one price, no negotiation dealership. That's not most of the people.
bingo. Bingo.
Consumers, no matter what they say, are going to want to negotiate. I've seen
Yeah,
it.
they're going to want to negotiate on something.
They need to feel like they have a win of some sort, right?
Absolutely.
I want to
Yeah,
just
when I was working-
can I throw something in here just real quick because I've been trying really hard not to just interrupt it. Sometimes we think way too small about this, right? Go back to the power of persuasion, the power of influence, what do real marketers do, what do real lobbyists do, what do real politicians do? And it's about influence. So if you think about Tesla for a minute, Tesla was co-founded in 2015, or not co-founded, OpenAI, which is your chat GPT that everybody's all wild about currently, was co-founded in 2015 by Elon Musk. Do you know that he stepped down in 2018 from that board, and he cited that it had to do with his work at Tesla and referred to the developments in the artificial intelligence that were being carried out. So there was a clear conflict of interest. But just for a minute, let's think about, it doesn't really matter what we say or what we do if we want to influence somebody else. The magic of subliminal marketing, as it used to be called, and the magic of having everything come up at your fingertips in the exact way you absorb it, in the exact way it needs to be served to you, with the exact right colors. If you look at something too long, there's a heat map. Those aren't conspiracy theories. Those are real things. And until they were released to the public recently, they were used on us, widely known and completely openly talked about. But then we want to fight things that we don't want to happen by saying, oh, maybe somebody's thinking about what somebody else is doing. No, that company, those models are being served up to them like magic in a way that feels so real. And that is what's going to change a country of people that are doing things, both decisions, laws, and the way that consumers buy. There's nobody that's a bigger advocate for the consumer buying journey than I am. I guarantee it. But I know how I can influence a consumer buying journey just through a dealership message of marketing. Imagine the power that's at your fingertips now when everything feels like it was your idea. The whole thing is just too small to think about the way that we are, or it will not change, and we will lose in all of those ways.
Well, when you talk about small thinking, I'm talking about small thinking coming from the manufacturers.
It's very
their influence.
They're not-
That's what I mean. I mean, it's everywhere, but there's influence there too, where it, of course it seems like a good model. Of course it feels like a good thing to follow without considering that in rural Pennsylvania, nobody else has a registered EV or wants a charger there, and they drive massive diesel trucks, and we're not going to change the demographic of audience. But when it feels like that's the right thing to do and you see something else happening, facts sometimes get pushed to the side because emotion makes buying decisions.
It's a truck market. Mississippi is a truck market. I mean, Kentucky,
95% of every market in the United States, I will say as an opinion, is a truck market.
and guess what? An EV truck, you turn on the air conditioner, you lose range. You put a payload on it, you lose range. I mean, they can't do what petroleum-based BEVs do.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
and the
I
technology, there is EV technology being developed, especially into commercial size heavy duty trucks. But that technology is not going to be cost effective in a consumer vehicle. So while there is tech out there that can still give you the range and the oomph, that's not going into a consumer's vehicle.
Affordability is a major.
It's out the window already.
I mean, I don't know if affordability was such a problem, we wouldn't have a 70% repossession rate and banks wouldn't be funding $1,000 car payments for people who make $3,000 a month, but that's real life.
Yeah. The
That's real life.
From the market. I'll get you in a second, April. Okay, right now we're facing a recession if we're not already in one. And part of that recession is the banks are withdrawing from the market. The special finance is gone. There is no special finance. Santander has backed off. They're not out of the market, but they've certainly tightened up. Wells Fargo tightened up. The banks are withdrawing from the market, which means we're not going to finance the cars. Jump on that, April.
I just want to piggyback something Marty said a minute ago. None of these other things matter as far as what the intent is or not the intent or what have you by the manufacturer or, even by the government for that matter, because with the government, the manufacturers, us as dealers, we're all here for one person only, and that's the consumer. So the problem that is happening right now, why we're having
Marty's correct. It is about the consumer.
Decisions are being made that are not about the consumer. point, period. Like that's the big problem, is that we're not taking into consideration the consumer should be driving every single aspect of all of these things. Whether we're talking about EV, whether we're talking about affordability, whether we're talking about one price, whether we're talking about buying online, that all should be driven by the consumer, period. The legislation, everything that goes into effect should be to hold
Marty already said that.
And I just want to piggyback that. I want to make sure that what Marty said is clear, because I think we get into these conversations about whether or not EVs will make it or not make it. It's not even about that. What it's about is that it has to be choice. Absolutely. Because here in Phoenix, we've got both. We're a huge truck market, but we do sell EVs because for some of our consumers, it does make sense for them, right? But when I drive out of town, I leave the city, I probably am not getting to the next city if I have an EV, because it's nothing.
Not in Arizona. Not in Arizona.
Right.
No.
And to your point about air conditioning, it's already well over 100 degrees here. We kind of need our air conditioning. So it just needs to be about choice. It needs to be about the consumer. And if we would just all put our focus on that, this would all work itself out.
And I want to jump in real quick, because that point, we talk about this a lot, and advocating for the actual consumer and free market development of products that are offered. But let's not forget what happened the last couple times these OEMs tried to go to direct to consumer. It was a massive failure. So I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, do they bump their head and think that this is going to be different all of a sudden because Elon did it? Like, I'm not sure, but they couldn't even manage it on a much smaller scale.
The Ford Auto Collection of 2000, when Ford just decided they were going to compete with their loyal dealers and buy and operate dealerships. Manufacturers don't know how to sell cars. And to answer Jason and Marty's premise, guess what? It's about the consumer, but the manufacturers aren't thinking of the consumer. They're thinking of an agenda.
Of course, an agenda, and they're bored. But it's like when I came up in this business, I was taught sales sells the first car, service sells all the rest, right? It's a life cycle of what we provide as a local community business in a dealership. It's not about a one and done. Can I buy a car online? Can I do this? Can I do that? And that's the part that I really think there has to be something. I wish that it was just that Farley wants to buy cars online and that was the only agenda driving this. But my gut says it is something much deeper and darker than that. And honestly, looking how they handled that previously, I mean, it's going to be a massive failure. But in the interim, how many people are going to lose their jobs? How many people are not going to be able to, pay their kids' tuition? How many people are not going to be able to put food on the table because these guys are playing high stakes game here?
Well, Stellantis has already instituted the agency model in Europe.
In Europe, yeah.
Right. General Motors is in lawsuits in Australia right now.
Well, Mercedes just got sued in Australia. They think they lost.
Australia, excuse me?
Didn't Mercedes just get sued in Australia as well?
I'm not sure. I know that General Motors is involved in. I know you're looking right now, Joe.
I only say things for Jason and Marty in the audience. I typically don't open my mouth unless I'm 97% sure I'm right.
Don't you guys think it's interesting though? Don't you think we should be a little more concerned about the fact that, like, think about when Apple came out with their first phone and it rode off of the first time you could have music in your ears that wasn't on a Walkman, or when Redbox came out and you could order a movie from a system instead of going to a store, and everybody went, those won't go away. But guess what? There's not a Blockbuster anymore, and there's not a Polaroid traditional anymore. Those things don't exist anymore, and they don't exist because everybody sat there and went, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. And while we're having conversations about if EVs can happen, instead of lobbying why it is that Tesla is going to end up introducing OpenAI into their vehicle and turning into the Apple of cars, And then your service that's so important won't matter because it didn't matter in the other elements. It is coming in a very short period of time. And that is a change that we need to really be focused on, because while we're focusing on other things and we're distracted with them, those are the changes that are taking place behind the scenes. And I don't know, I don't do politics here, but I will say I watched the Facebook conversation with Congress, and it was gross and disappointing. And so if you can't understand how Facebook marketing worked 10 years ago, what chance do we stand when it comes to AI and vehicles taking out these franchises that we're working so hard to protect and the consumers who buy from them? It's just short-sighted in that there's such a bigger picture involved in how fast those things are moving. And I don't know if anybody's paying attention to it because I don't see it anywhere.
The agency model, Jason.
Yeah, look, to your point, it's out there in other countries, not here. Would they like it to bring here? Sure. I forget who said
Are
this.
they trying to bring it here?
You certainly could see that based on actions, if not words, right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, for sure. One of the things I think ultimately, at the end of the day, we have going for us, when I say we, the collective we in this industry that care about the franchise system, those that work in it, and those like Marty and myself, depending on the state, and I'm in a state, and I think Marty's in a similar state, where our legislators are really tuned in and understand the importance of the car dealer. They get that story. They get the fact that there are 28,000 jobs in Kentucky attributed to car dealers, averaging 55 employees per store, with the average annual earnings of $70,000 and the annual payroll of just under $900 million. They get that story because we're always telling them that story.
Yeah.
So it becomes very important. So in some instances, when you're in a state like a non-ZEV state, for example, and we have these relationships with our legislators because we're built of smaller communities throughout the state, we can be somewhat of a firewall on some of these items. Other states, my friend in California has his hands full. There are other states that are just, I couldn't imagine having to be in. So someone said it earlier that it really is a regional type of thing. And we're talking about government pushing something, and to be very clear, it's the federal government that's pushing these agenda items. And some states, I can tell you, the state of Kentucky is not pushing this as a agenda items. Now they're going after business and jobs by welcoming Ford here and building a battery plant, which provides jobs and economic impact. But so far as legislators looking to bring that type of legislation, i.e. the agency model, and saying, boy, this could be a really good idea, their first call is going to be to the car dealers in their local areas who they go to church with, they know, they golf with, what have you.
Yeah.
And say, Mr. and Mrs. Dealer, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah.
I've got a couple car dealers in my Rotary Club.
Yeah.
We're involved in the community.
That's exactly right.
Here's the other thing. Jennifer brought this up earlier, the Right to Repair Act. Now, all of a sudden we've got repair, and April brought this to my attention a couple of weeks ago. I was Paul Revere riding through cyberspace saying the Right to Repair Act is coming, and people didn't see the importance of it. But now all of a sudden the manufacturers are going to be able to give warranty work to private individual companies. Pep Boys do warranty work. That's where this thing is heading. That we're going to lose the ability to be paid on warranty work because other entities are going to be paid on it.
Right. And they don't have the facility requirements that we do as dealers. So I wonder, that frustrates me. And I know the Right to Repair Act has been around for a long time, but the resurgent.
It heated up last year when Biden signed the bill.
Yeah, it is quite frustrating for me, I think. Only because, learning the dealership from the financial statement forward and understanding how important the fixed ops department is to an operation. And again, we just said it a minute ago, sales sells the first, service sells the rest. And that is supposed to be truly where we're handling all of those expenses. And to have to compete I mean, we're already competing on some dissension.
Jennifer, you brought this up. Let me interrupt you a second.
Oh, go ahead.
Didn't you
Did you know
tell
I'll
me
talk
that
about this for
Ford-
hours?
You told me that Ford Motor Company was building separate repair. I think that might have been April.
April brought that to the table last week.
April, tell us what you were saying.
And I find that to be even more concerning is that the OEMs are now going to allow people to build service only facilities. Well, to go to Jennifer's point, how is that fair that I have to spend all the money for the infrastructure for sales, all the money for all the EV stuff, all the money for all these things, and you're going to let them go and just open up a service only and just take all the gravy, have a fun time, appreciate you, and then not think that location isn't going to take those customers and that data, that first party data in that location, and give it to the people they want to give it to for those future sales.
Yes.
Which is
and target them magically in the most magical way so that they're the choice.
Okay,
detrimental to the loyalty life cycle.
Jason and Marty aren't going to want to hear this. Jason, put your fingers in your ears.
Jason does want to hear it. I bet he does.
I'm letting you guys roll.
There are bell cow dealers. And what I mean by bell cow dealers, there are dealers that are so in bed with the factory, and what I'm saying right now, they are there to guide the rest of the dealers in the factory's direction. There are bell cow dealers and
influencers.
What's that?
Influencers,
bell cow dealers, whatever you want to call them. But there are certain dealers that are so deep in bed with the factory that they're leading the dealers to their detriment, and they get special favors to do this.
Yeah,
that's what Bobbie was talking about just now.
Well, Jim, and to your point, that's why there is such an issue, and I think Marty mentioned it earlier with this one-size-fits-all approach as it relates to this Ford's Model E program, whereas here in Frankfort, Kentucky, my Ford dealer is going to have to spend the same outlay and resources as someone in Los Angeles County, California. I mean, it's just it's mind-boggling. So there's a lot at play there. One thing I want to share with you, I thought this was just sort of interesting. You guys might find it interesting as I did. I was looking at some just recent polling as it relates to EVs, and the most recent one I found was a Gallup poll end of April. And one of the features that it talks about is we are a divided nation in a lot of ways, right? Political party affiliation very much drives the views and thoughts on EVs and the decision-making regarding EVs. And here's just a couple bit of numbers. Current ownership of a mix of EVs among partisans is 6%, for Democrats 4%, for independents 1%. When they talk about those seriously considering purchase an EV, the majority of Democrats, 54%, say they may consider it in the future. Meanwhile, a substantial majority of Republicans, 71%, say they would not consider that. Now, when you look at the just sheer numbers, and if you look at the locations where these things are, all the more reason you have to consider a very regional approach as it relates not just to EVs, but all
regional approach, red states and blue states.
Right. And that has to factor in. So,
I was ultimately, and this is again with the partisan lines and regionally and things like that. Ultimately, it really doesn't matter how an American family votes if they can't afford the payment on one of these EVs. They can't afford to install, a charging station.
They can't afford the payment on a gasoline.
Well, I mean, what we're looking at right now, especially with interest rates, I saw somebody in the comments is like, this is why I love used cars. And I mean, I can't disagree with that, with my accounting background and looking at the profit and loss statements. But it is astounding to me because it's not even EV is just a way that they can wiggle in against these franchise laws and agreements that we have. It is just the route that they're taking. And ultimately it's going to be bad for America, period, not because of the EV vehicle and whether or not you want one or can get around the deserts where April lives, or or whatever it might be.
The average cost of a car right now, or average transaction price, is over $70,000.
It is insane to me. Insane to me. And the early adopters might be the only adopters. If we think about it, again, we talk about this a lot. Want buyers versus need buyers. 94% of the purchases are need. I need a car to get to work. I need a car to get my kids to school. And it is not because I want to have the latest and greatest and coolest technology. It's that I need to support my family. So I need that car. And I think that's regardless. And I think that's super interesting information, Jason, as far as who's interested in the EV. But I tell you, I mean, I'm not interested in an EV only because I drive everywhere. And
it doesn't fit with your lifestyle.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with my lifestyle. And quite frankly, the first group I ever worked for, we had a Cadillac store, and I was actually super excited for the Cadillac EV when it very first came out, until I learned I can't fit in an EV. I'm almost 6 foot tall. And so I remember when it came to the North American Auto Show, I was so excited to climb inside that car, and I couldn't even fit. Not anything against small vehicles. I know fuel economy is very important, but out here in the Midwest where we make them a little bit bigger, it's just not a thing.
Let's get back on Right to Repair Act. We sort of glossed over that. We didn't.
Oh yeah, because you could see my eyes starting to twitch. I thought you were segueing.
We're in a different direction. Marty Milstead, Right to Repair Act. What are you seeing in your state?
It has not surfaced in Mississippi.
Okay, so it's surfacing in other states, so Arizona, for instance.
Right, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
No, and again, look, part of this does go back to a regional viewpoint of all these items, right? What are the beliefs intrinsic to the people in that area and that state, right? And that's where these battles are going to be fought. So whether it be Kentucky, whether it's Mississippi, my friend Jared in West Virginia, those that put a premium on having the right to get vehicles that they want to, having a good relationship with the dealer community and the legislative body, those things are so important. So same here has not come up here from that standpoint.
But do you see that it's going to? I mean,
I think
things have a tendency to come your way.
Yeah, they certainly they can, and they can grow, and these problems don't end at state borders. But that's why it's so important when we talk about the advocacy efforts and the engagement of not just the dealers, but those working in the stores and having those relationships with the legislators. Boy, it really makes it tough for them to advance those agendas when that's in place. The deck is awful stacked against them.
April?
I have one question. Am I the only one that thinks that the manufacturers, if this is really their end game, is to do away with the franchise laws, that we have an affordability problem now? If they literally did do away with it, they would wipe out the middle class. The middle class would almost be wiped out when you consider the amount of jobs between the dealers, the vendors, the partners, everything that is done in communities by dealerships, that nobody would be able to afford any of the vehicles that they make.
Right.
No.
I mean, there's just this part of me that goes, those $1 billion bean counters have to have some sort of reality that says forest through the trees, people. That doesn't make sense.
April, I had 9 Escalades between 2000 and 2010. 9 Escalades, 7 Corvettes during the same amount of time. My last 2010 Escalade was $60,000. And I tricked it up. I'm telling you, I put every accessory on it. All I needed was a rap group and a posse. I mean, I had that thing just really tricked out. But guess what? They're now 120,000.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be at least double right now.
Inflation hasn't doubled in 10 years or 13 years, whatever it is.
Yeah, but that goes so far back. And again, I'm going to maybe date myself a little bit here. The diminishing margin between invoice and MSRP, the amount they've been giving us has been shrinking for a long time. And the agency model is just that last little nail in the coffin. In April, it's idiocy is what it is. And I mean, I'll just come out and say it. I'm going to say what Jim said. In my opinion, it's idiocracy because it does not make sense. You're going to not only take these wonderful franchisees that have been partners with you for so long, but you are going to be damaging and impacting the consumer of your product as well.
Some of these dealers shook their grandparents shook hands with Henry Ford 80 years ago.
Yeah, I've got a 5th generation Ford store that I work with, and I know what it's like, and it is so crazy to see all of the things that they've overcome to just adapt to doing business now, and for the company that they've been lining their pockets for hundreds of years. Like, come on. But I think the biggest thing, and coming back to this whole Right to Repair Act, and it infuriates me that Ford is doing these, separate service centers and opening this up. When you are making sure that consumer life cycle, and listen, I have gotten bit by ignoring my loyalty, my retention marketing efforts for my database in the past, grown very expensively through acquisition of new customers and conquest. But the most profitable way is that loyalty and the retention. And if they're going to open it up and let anybody service the vehicles, I feel like we as dealers have paid blood, sweat, and tears and lots of dollars to hit the requirements to be able to have that business and nurture that business for the life cycle of the customer, not just one RO. It's so much more than one set of tires. It's so much more than one oil change. And it's just incredibly frustrating to see it just the writing on the wall. They are trying to disrupt it. They are trying to move to this agency model. And again, like I said, it didn't really work out so well for them in the past. I don't know.
Marty,
insanity.
Marty Milstead, we got 5 minutes left. What have we not talked about on this show that you think is an important subject to talk about?
Dog hunting.
Proper accessories
Marty,
and wild dog hunting.
That is a great subject. Okay, I'll go to Jason. I'll have to see if I get a different answer. Jason, what have we not talked about in this broadcast?
Well, I too am disappointed about the dog hunting piece, but look, I think something you touched on earlier that I see is a great concern is the tightening of credit and not having a whole class of folks that have been having a difficult time maybe getting credit or just on that lower tier.
People that were previously good are now bad because we've sold them cars for $10,000 over. The repossessions are up, so people that were previously good credit are now bad. Continue on, Jason. I interrupted.
Yeah, look, to me that's a real concern. The subprime market, it's like we had your A+ customer, and then you have your subprime market, and that middle market is shrinking, and that's concerning, both from a standpoint of what that's going to done in the larger economic side of things as it relates to now that worker can't get a vehicle. What are they going to do? They don't have a bus system or public transportation system.
Buy here, pay here.
Right. And then that, as we know, can be an endless cycle because you don't get a chance to get out of that, if you will, because you don't have the benefit of being reported to bureaus a lot of times, things of that nature. So that's a concern. And you couple that with the things going on in Washington with the CFPB and these overburdensome regs that are coming down the line. Boy, it's really going to hurt the people that need the most help. And that's what I see as a really big concern moving forward.
Jennifer, we got 1 minute left.
Well, I strongly disagree with Tim Pyle's comment there. I know that the dealers that I work with across the country do a great job of taking care of their customers. And I got it, brand loyalty.
I agree with him. I disagree with you.
I don't think that there's no loyalty. What we are selling in a franchise dealership is a relationship. We are selling the fact that we can take care of those customers. And if we do it the right way, they do come back. So, I mean, I respect your right to be wrong, Jim.
Okay, I understand. April, now take it away from Jennifer.
Well, I 100% agree with Jennifer. I mean, people will buy a different brand, a different vehicle,
I just
a
gave it to
completely
you.
different
You
situation based
stabbed me in
upon
the
the
back.
experience they have with the salesperson. So, or service advisor if they're in the service department. So people will completely buy a different product because of loyalty to a human. So humans, whether you're talking about customers or employees, are the most important aspect, and that's just what we've got to continue preaching.
Okay, Tim Pyle says he's misunderstood. Okay, okay, I understand. Hey, Tim, don't back off. Own it, Tim. Own it.
Yeah.
He's not wrong for a lot of people's mentality. I'm just saying that the best operators may maintain that loyal customer.
Customers have no loyalty.
I don't know about
Wave
that.
goodbye to the audience, everybody. Wave goodbye.